ICMA is celebrating 100 years since adding the I to its name and embarking on a global journey that is heavily rooted in global knowledge exchange. Joining us for today's Global Spotlight is Matt Fulton, ICMA Midwest Regional Director. Matt has been involved in local government for almost 4 decades, including serving on the ICMA Executive Board as a Midwest Vice President. He is a passionate supporter of building global engagement among local government leaders, based on his connection with ICMA's historical work focused on building out the I in ICMA, and from his direct and personal experiences over more than a decade of his career. Thanks so much for joining us today, Matt.
Thank you, Jesse. Glad to be here.
Let's get right into it. Can you tell us a bit about your previous experience with global engagement?
Jesse, I've been around ICMA now for over 40 years. I think my first annual conference was in 1983. And I've been involved around the global engagement conversation for a really long time. And it's been kind of a constant throughout my entire career. I met a manager from South Africa named Granville Schenker. Of course, at every annual conference, there are international delegates, and Granville was one of those international delegates one time. And that just kind of prompted me to immediately become interested in the things that Granville was doing in his community and his region, and comparing it to things that I was involved with. So I got myself involved into the Global Engagement Committee, which at the time was called the International Task Force, and served on that committee for over a decade. And we would always meet twice a year. We'd meet once at the annual conference, and then we would meet internationally. So as a result, I've had this opportunity, really unique opportunity, to be able to travel internationally 10 or more times. And we would have our committee meetings, but then we'd also have the opportunity to learn about communities wherever I was at. And it would have been fully developed communities to developing areas. And so we had this broad opportunity to experience firsthand and to learn firsthand how other communities are dealing with issues that are very common in nature to things that are globally universal. Being safe, having good housing, good educations, an organization that is run professionally. And so through this involvement with this committee, I've been able to stay connected and build this network of global friends and colleagues that continue on to this day. And it's been one of those unique opportunities that I've had in my career. And because of my experiences, I just really believe in this conversation that we're initiating with ICMA and trying to truly put some muscle around the I in ICMA.
So you've touched on this a bit, but how have these global exchange experiences impacted your professional life?
You know, things that communities do they're very consistent regardless of where you live. The things that are variables are the history of the community, the culture, the economics, the political aspects of where communities are. And so how different managers approach the same issues will vary depending upon that historical context. And so having the opportunity to just become aware and experience those differences really just helps you to think broader on accomplishing or tackling those really wicked issues that you have in your own community. And that broader perspective only comes because you've gotten outside of your boundaries and allowed yourself to learn and to absorb these alternative ways of dealing with exactly the same issues. So as an example, one of my, to this day, friends and colleagues is Mirmir Servenson, who was a manager in Sweden, just outside of Malmo. Same size community. I was managing a community of about 25,000. Mirmir and I were talking about our various communities. In my case, I was managing a community in Minnesota with a population of around 22,000. His community was about the same size. I had about 40 police officers in my police department, and Mirmir had about 12. And so that immediately kind of prompted me to say, well, how can you deal with the same kind of public safety issues that I'm dealing with in Minnesota? And it all based upon the history of Sweden, the regulations around guns, the way they deal with just kind of neighborhood engagement from a public safety standpoint, the way they engage regional public safety to kind of support the needs of the local communities. And it's just handling those issues differently, which is based in its own context. It really helped me to just really appreciate that as you consider problems, don't stay within your municipal boundaries or the framework that you have in your own mind. Learn and share and communicate various options and ways that you can deal with an issue, just to kind of prompt people to think bigger and broader for accomplishing some of the problems that you're running into.
It really helps to be open-minded in that case, and just like you said, look beyond your own borders and expand that network. And definitely, this has been covered in your previous answer. but let's expand on it a bit. Why are global exchanges and knowledge sharing so valuable to anyone in local government?
It's very, very true that you only know what you know. And unless you have the opportunities to experience firsthand international opportunities, and exchange is one way that you can accomplish that, especially in an exchange program where you can spend concerted time with a colleague or another community to really learn at a much deeper level the issues that they're dealing with and the context of whatever those issues are. It just becomes a really important way to kind of broaden your own perspectives, as well as to just learn at a much deeper level what are the issues that impact community discussions, community conflicts, and challenges that managers run into all the time. These opportunities to dive deep and be deep. I mean, as an example, this isn't a formal exchange, but Miramir and I actually set up in 2005 an exchange of managers between Minnesota and Sweden. And we had about 20 Minnesota managers that went to Sweden on an exchange. We actually arranged that they lived in the city managers' homes instead of being bunked at a hotel. So they really got to learn what the family life was in a Swedish environment. And the same thing was true when the Swedish manager was a group of about 12, came back to Minnesota. And it just kind of helped underscore how our knowledge base is really based upon the context of the environment that you are working in and you are growing up in and that you're used to. And the way that you grow is to allow yourself the opportunity to expand. And the exchange program is a wonderful way to do that.
So, our audience out here likes the idea, wants to get involved. What advice can you give other local government professionals who may be interested in taking part in any type of global exchange, whether it be formal, informal, or something in between?
For those managers that have an inkling or a desire to learn a little bit more beyond their boundaries and bring in this international knowledge base, I think you got to be courageous. You got to be courageous, and you got to be intentional. And you need to be a leader. I mean, I think that the global engagement conversation that ICMA is initiating is really going to be predicated on having leaders and champions that realize the benefit of having an international conversation and making those international connections. So that the idea is, if I'm a manager in the United States and I want to make sure that I'm doing my job as the best that I possibly can, I need to appreciate that the solutions may not be based in the stuff that I'm doing in the US. I mean, as an example, the environmental work that was being done in Sweden, the regional governance and delivery systems that were being done in Sydney, Australia, the connections around management best practices between Australia and New Zealand, the efforts in Jamaica where they're trying to develop local government and they're really kind of operating at a national level, the infrastructure needs and the strategic planning challenges that exist in Guadalajara, Mexico. If you're not paying attention to those kinds of things, there's really no way that you're going to really be able to appreciate how they can feed into the work that you're doing locally already. So you got to be a champion and you got to kind of lead that effort and intentional. Now, it's really important as you get into this new and unique conversation, make sure you're communicating with your council, with your staff. Make it as broad-based as you can. If there are ways that you can do exchanges or connections where you can involve your organizations and your different departments, from public safety to public works to engineering, make it become part of your strategic initiatives for your entire community. Bring other folks in, bring the community in. There's already tons of international work going on in your community in the private sector. Multinational companies have cultural issues that they need to deal with their employee base. You just need to have an appreciation that is already existing. How do you go about embracing that and organizing it, but be intentional, build it into your strategic plan, and bring everybody, or as many people as you can, along with you in the conversation and in that effort.
All great pieces of advice for our audience, and I'm sure they can take those nuggets with them back to their community and hopefully start that conversation or continue it. What are your hopes for ICMA's next 100 years of global work?
You know what? ICMA has the I in their title, in their name, for a reason, and that is it is an international organization, and we have international members now. And my hope for ICMA is that it becomes the international organization that if there is a best practice or if there is a way of dealing with an issue that's impacting local government professionals around the globe, that it becomes the body that can collect and disseminate that information to members for whatever the issue is, conveniently taking advantage of as much the most recent technologies that are available, so that local governments, regardless of where you're at, can benefit from the best ideas and the best practices, so you can find the best solutions for whatever the issue is. And I think that one of the things that I would love to see ICMA doing is help figure out a way that we can start having those conversations internationally around common problems, so that the U.S. managers can appreciate and start to learn a little bit about what I'm talking about. Find something that's impacting communities around the world, and then bring in international delegates or local government professionals in various parts of the world, subject to time zones and all of those complicating factors, just to have conversations, to meet each other and to learn about how are you accomplishing the short-term rental issue or the dog park issue or this public safety issue. Those things that are part of our daily lives that we take for granted and we're struggling with. Let's learn from each other on an international level. And ICMA is positioned and is strategically able to pull all of those thoughts and people together. And so my hope is that ICMA becomes that leading and premier and kind of continue to be that preferred organization for local government professionals.
Matt, thank you so much for sharing your experience and everything for this audience. Really appreciate it and looking forward to what you're doing next.
That's great, Jesse. Thanks for the invitation. I'm really glad to be part of this.
And you can stay tuned for more content as we celebrate 100 years of ICMA's international work. And to view more global spotlights, be sure to subscribe to our channel.